I'm going to show you 5 settings you need to know about your camera so your image doesn't look like this. Be sure to watch to the end of the video to see the most important camera feature. The first camera setting that you need to know about is white balance. This camera setting establishes the true color of white. White balance range varies on different cameras. For instance, my camera, the Panasonic Lumix S1H, has a color temperature range from 2500 Kelvin to 10,000 Kelvin, but a good range to remember is 3200 Kelvin to 5600 Kelvin. In case you didn't know, Kelvin is the measurement for color temperature. You usually see the letter K at the end of the number. You can either use a white balance card or the cheap and quick method, a piece of paper, to white balance your camera. Or if you know the color temperature in the room, you can set your camera to that manually. Some cameras also have built-in settings for different scenarios, such as sunny day, cloudy day, indoors, fluorescent lighting, etc. Generally, 5600 is to match daylight, and 3200 is to match incandescent lighting indoors. However, the white balance rule can be broken. It depends on the look you want to go for. If you want a warmer look, raise your camera's white balance, and if you want a cooler look, lower your camera's white balance. You can even mix lights with different color temperatures for a different look and feel, but that's for a different video. The ISO refers to the sensitivity of the camera's sensor. It originally referred to the sensitivity of the film in a camera to light. Most cameras have a base or native ISO, and some, such as my Panasonic S1H, has a dual native ISO, which is a feature in Panasonic cinema cameras. The base ISO refers to the ISO sensitivity providing maximum latitude from the image sensor. Ensure you know your camera's base ISO and stick to that base ISO when you film. Some other camera ops might not agree with me on this. Well, they're wrong. JK. But for real, sticking to the base ISO will give you the most dynamic range for working with the footage in post-production. My S1H has a dual native ISO of 640 for low and 4000 for high. 640 is for brighter scenes and outside, and 4000 is for inside and darker scenes. You can stray away from the native ISO if you absolutely need to, but I would prefer to have the most dynamic range as possible for post-production and just light the scene or use a variable ND outside to dial in the proper exposure with the base ISOs. The next camera setting that you should know is your shutter. The shutter is a device through which the lens aperture of a camera is open to emit light and expose the film, or the electronic image sensor of a digital camera. Most smaller digital cameras and mirrorless cameras use shutter speed, while larger cinema cameras use shutter angle. In regards to shutter speed, this is the time that is measured when the camera shutter is opened. The faster the shutter speed, the less motion blur you will have. This is because the shutter is opening and closing faster, allowing more of the scene to be recorded. With shutter speed, you essentially want to be double the frame rate to achieve proper motion blur. For instance, 23.98 or 24 frames per second should have a shutter speed of 1/48 to achieve proper motion blur. Some cameras don't have 1/48, like the Sony a7S II, so you would choose 1/50. Now the downside of shutter speed is if you change your frame rate, you need to change your shutter speed. If you don't, you will have jittery motion blur. For instance, I have done this before and it sucked. Luckily, the footage was deemed artistic and was still used, but you need to remember to change your shutter speed. Now, in regards to shutter angle, it digitally replicates in today's larger cinema cameras, where a rotary shutters disc containing the angled opening spins and lets in light once per revolution to expose every frame. Old cinema cameras could be opened up mechanically from 11 degrees to 180 degrees maximum. Today's cameras can digitally go up to 360 degrees, where the shutter speed becomes as slow as the frame rate. With shutter angle, you pretty much want to set it to 180 degrees like all the time. The advantage to this is no matter your frame rate, it will always be set to the proper shutter angle, giving you the proper motion blur. Of course, you can always change the shutter speed or shutter angle to meet the needs of the project and your creative vision. But the general rule of thumb is shutter speed is twice the frame rate, or shutter angle is at 180 degrees. Speaking of frame rate, the fourth tip for y'all is correct frame rate. Frame rate is the measurement of how quickly a number of frames appear within a second, which is why it's also called FPS, frames per second. Usually films, music videos, some shows, and documentaries tend to use 24 frames per second, or 23.98, or even 23.976 on some cameras. TV broadcasts and streaming video content tend to use 30 frames per second, or 29.97 FPS drop frame. I'm not going to get into drop frames so much, but due to timing of shows on actual broadcast TV to match real time, drop frame is used to drop some frames, since 29.97 doesn't fit evenly into a second, and this helps match the time of the broadcast to real time. In the USA, we use 29.97 FPS due to NTSC standards, while in the other side of the world, mostly 25 FPS is used due to PAL standards. More about NTSC and PAL in another video. You want the correct frame rate to produce the correct motion blur for viewing. Frame rate and shutter speed or shutter angle go hand in hand. 24 FPS or 23.98 FPS is good for film because it appears to the human eye as most natural. Or you have your higher frame rates like 60, 120 if you want to do slow motion. As always, you can change this to what you want based on creative desire. Quick note, if you are working with a sound mixer and they ask you about timecode, make sure you know what frame rate you are using. They are probably using a device such as a Tentacle or other timecode sync device to embed the same timecode with the same frame rate in the audio as data, so you can sync the video with the audio more easily while editing. The fifth tip is exposure. Now I know exposure itself is technically not a camera setting. You have some exposure adjustment. I feel it is very important. Using a combination of your ISO, your aperture, depending on the depth of field that you want, and controlling the lighting, you want the proper exposure when shooting. Exposure is the amount of light that reaches your camera's sensor, creating visual data over a period of time. Having proper exposure will help preserve all the details in the footage and give the most data possible to get the best image when in post-production. This can include using tools such as false color, waveform, histogram, and even using a light meter. You want to use these tools so you don't overexpose, aka blow out your highlights, or underexpose and crush your blacks. Expose properly and you will have a fantastic image for your video or film. Bonus tip. Now I said the tips were listed from least important to most, and now I have a bonus tip as the most important tip. That tip is sound. Yes, you can't have great video without great sound. And no, I am not saying this because my roommate is a sound mixer and has threatened me with the force of the Sound Ninja Guild and the power of the sound gods. I really do believe sound is the most important. Audio will make or break your film. Audio is like 70% of the film. Think of the dialogue, the music, the sound effects, etc. Everything has to be recorded and well blended to give the most immersive experience. Now, you might be saying, Viking DP, what does that have to do with my camera? I am getting to that, young warrior. On most cameras, you have some type of audio input. It could be XLR inputs or a 3.5mm mic jack. Depending on the production, you want audio running directly into your camera from the microphone and or sound mixer. Plus, you have some sort of audio settings you can adjust on your camera. It could be the gain, wind cut control, different quality levels, and even phantom power. There could be other settings as well. The audio going into your camera with proper settings will help speed up production because the audio will already be synced with the video. Even if you don't run audio into your camera, it is good to have some type of onboard microphone recording audio to make it easier to sync with the video, and good audio from the sound mixer in post-production. These tips might be subjective in order of importance, or with them being the most important at all, but in my 10 plus years of experience in video production, I believe learning these settings will give you a great image every time. I want to mention thank you to Awesome Movie Gear once again for helping me with the microphone adapter I'm using for this video. Not sponsored, by the way, my supervisor made me say that. Awesome Movie Gear is an amazing resource for video and film projects of any size, so check them out for your gear rental needs. Well, I have no products to show off today, but I started a site called Buy Me a Coffee. It is a website like Patreon where you can offer more support for exclusive perks or just to show your support. Right now, you can make one-off donations. There are member tiers, but I am still working on building those out. Click on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description and contribute to support. Your support means I can produce more videos and ultimately make films for you to watch. If you sign up for a member tier, you can help beta test as I start releasing content for each tier. The first 10 people to sign up for a tier to beta test will get extra exclusive perks. Thank you for watching the Viking DP Nerd Out About Camera Gear. If you found this video helpful, attack that like button and subscribe for more filmmaker news, tutorials, and reviews. Also, ring the notification bell as well so you get to see this lovely face. Keep fighting, film friends. Viking DP out. Oh, while you're at it, you should subscribe. And oh yeah, check out my latest video.